Welcome to Inspire Change, a new inspirational and motivational broadcast that strives to empower men in a positive way, designed to educate, empower, and inspire even the busiest individual on the go over that first cup of coffee. Please join me in welcoming Gunter, international psychologist, author, speaker, and producer.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change. So, carrying on from the last session, I'm going to reflect again as we're coming towards the end of the year on 2020. Most challenging year to date, I'd say, in most people's living memory. In fact, the Queen, at the demise of Princess Diana, once referred to her year in that era as my annus horribilis. And I suspect many people right now will share that 2020 was an annus horribilis. But is it all bad? Let's think about that. Is it an either or? Was the year either good or was it all bad? And my answer to that is that that's not true. It wasn't either anything. It was good and bad. There was some personal, individual and community experiences in this last year that showed how we as human beings can step up into a much more civilized place. Now, unfortunately, that was also counterbalanced by some really nasty business as well, which continues to this very moment and probably will continue into the next year as people subscribe to all sorts of nonsensical conspiracy theories and believe the lies that they're fed through media and some of the leadership in our culture. Beware of those who sound too good. I read a book once by Carlos Castaneda's called The Yucky Way of Knowledge, and in it he describes clarity as an illusion. And I think this is something that we need to keep in mind as we go along. So I want you to reflect on both the good and the bad of this last year. Why? Because I want you to embrace gratitude as part of your reflections. Because again, it wasn't all bad. Some of us as dads experienced having to work from home and therefore spent more time with our children, with our wives. And yes, I know there's going to be some guys there who are going to go, oh, well, that was a bit of a challenge. Yes, there has been an increase in domestic violence. That's the other side. But for most of us as men, much of the capacities to step out the usual habituated, ritualistic, structured day was actually a blessing. It took us out of our comfort zone. It got us to think about how we can adapt to this much better. And guess what? A lot of us have decided that this is actually workable. Some of us may not need to go to an office every day. Some of us can do a large part of our work from home and then with some thought can interact literally face to face with some social distancing. So why focus on gratitude? Well, firstly, because if you don't, you risk getting stuck in the doldrums, in that deep pit of melancholy. Now, so let me take you through a few of the benefits before I go into how you may be able to approach this. So the first thing is, and I always start off with the physical, is that gratitude has a positive, lasting effect on the brain. Okay? Remember the idea of neuroplasticity. Yes, we're hardwired, but that hardwiring can change. It's adaptive. Okay? And much of it depends on how I choose to think. having worked with people in situations where they've had to confront post-traumatic stress disorder because they've been involved in a war zone, or they were seriously injured as a result of seeing action, or they were a law enforcement agent and had been in a critical incident. Even with something as critical as that, we know that trauma is contained within the body, and if we work with the body and the neurology of the body, we can actually change the experience and our reaction to that experience. So it's very, very, very important. Now, the whole issue with gratitude is that it even helps when I don't share it with anybody, when I just think it. One of the things I use a lot in my work is visualization. Why? Because visualization helps prep my system neurologically, psychologically, behaviorally for the desired outcome that I want. Okay, so if I sit on the beach and I visualize paddling out, getting into the line-up zone, taking off, if I do that enough, essentially I'm helping my system to be match ready, to be absolutely able to embrace that. The other aspect that I find fundamentally important in exercising gratitude is that it frees us from toxic emotions. Now, let me rephrase that a little bit, because as I'm sitting here thinking about it, are emotions really toxic? Well, some are and some aren't. It depends a lot on context. So we could have a serious debate about this that would go on for podcast to podcast to podcast. But let's just make the assumption right now that seriously negative emotions can become toxic. Resentment is a good example of that. Okay. Now, one of the great resentment busters is in fact gratitude. So if I harbour resentments, it's going to eat me up. It's the poison that attacks me, not the other person. So that's a really, really important issue. Okay, so one of the things I want to share with you is a particular approach to exercising gratitude that has come to me through my membership with an organisation called PositivePsychology.com. And they've got lots of stuff for coaches and psychologists and therapists, which I find really, really, really useful. And the one that I've been using quite a bit is an exercise called Practicing Gratitude with a Naikan Reflection. Okay? Naikan therapy, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right because it's Japanese, is a structured method of self-reflection that was developed in Japan in the 1940s by Isshin Moshimoto, a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist minister. And it literally translates into looking within. Now, all of you who've been paying attention and following my podcasts will recognize that that is a fundamental position that I take in my life and that I help people to take in their life, is to look within. Stop looking outside of yourself for all the answers. It's not going to happen. Stop looking outside of yourself for happiness, for success. These are experiences that generate from within. So the 3 questions featured in my podcast that I want you guys to reflect on starts off with essentially, what have I given? So what have you contributed to your relationships and your environment? Think about it. The next question is, what have I received? as I said, lots of people will be looking at this year as a place of pain, without pleasure, without joy, without happiness, without satisfaction. A very two-dimensional, myopic perception of what's happened to us as a community. Now, the other one is always really interesting, which is, what trouble have I caused? Now, I found that particular aspect in reflection of this year somewhat amusing, to be honest, because a lot of people are not asking themselves that at all. Here we are at a time and place where we do need to take responsibility for what we bring to the table individually, as a community, as a culture. Now, at the centre of those three questions lies that intersection where I experience gratitude. So our reflection on these questions helps to cultivate gratitude and appreciation, but it also expands our awareness of how we treat others. And this is sorely missing to date. People are doing fundamentally egotistical, selfish, narcissistic stuff, like not giving a shit about infecting other people or exploiting other people materially. These things are issues of poor character, if you pay attention to the last series of episodes that I've done. Someone of good character has the morality to look at inspiring and bringing to the table those things that make us civilized, that make us human beings, worthy of a strong culture, a culture that respects philosophy, history, art, science, rather than nonsensical conspiracy theories based on dividing our community. Gratitude is an antidote to those amoral, immoral pursuits. To step outside into a light of illumination, of enlightenment, rather than succumbing to a regressive attitude. Eric Berne came up with a psychological theory called transactional analysis, and in it he describes the human psyche consisting of the child, adult, and sort of parent. It's a derivation from Freud's superego, ego, and id. Id being the child, ego the adult, and the superego being the parent. So, parent being a bit moralistic, a bit, what's right and wrong. The adult, however, is the well-shaped, self-aware, flexible, resilient part of our nature, our psyche. And unfortunately, my observation over recent years has been we have descended into the phase of the petulant child, the temper tantrum, thumb-sucking, individualistic narcissist. Empathy is a collective experience, is possibly at an all-time low. Do we want this to continue, or do we want to change it? If we're going to allow it to continue, 80% of us are going to suffer seriously. Another 10% are going to have some buffers, but the only people who are going to really benefit from this is the feudal hierarchy, the 1% that we talk about, who continue to exploit. Look at the types of laws and policies and procedures that are being passed at a political level. Now, once we as an individual embrace gratitude, then we can also go back and get out of our comfort zone and have the courage and the resilience, the nature to change things positively for all of us. And I think that's a really important point of reflection as we're heading towards the close of 2020. For some, that annus horribilis, but for others, a truly enlightening experience where we've been tested and have come through. Not without pain, not without distress, not without encountering some psychological disturbances. But the best way to deal with those anxieties and disturbances is to stop worrying about those things that we can't change and embrace the things that we can. Because that is what's going to make the difference. You know, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And that's a very important position to take in this particularly challenging year that has so tested most of us. So don't shy away from it. Don't, retreat back into your comfort zone because it got a little scary out there. Those of us of moral conviction will have and need the courage now more than that which needs to be changed. So again, let me invite you, sit back and think about, reflect, use the night can reflection to broaden and expand your horizon about yourself and others. Gratitude is a wonderful thing. It's the cherry on top. So, till next time, I'm signing off.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change with Gunter. Gunter Swoboda does individual and group coaching for men looking to grow. For more information on this and the global Making Good Men Great movement, check out goodmengreat.com to get into contact. If you have a topic for the show or would like to be a guest on the air, please email producers at miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda, Miranda, at noirtainment, noirtainment.com. Thank you, and always keep inspiring change.